In a world where everyone's constantly talking, sharing, and oversharing, where we're expected to always be posting updates, announcing our goals, explaining our thoughts, something powerful has been forgotten. Silence. Not just any silence, but strategic silence. While most people are out there telling everyone their next move, detailing their opinions, or just trying to be seen and heard, the real power players, the ones who actually win, know when to shut up. They understand that silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's a tool, a weapon, a strategy. Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century philosopher and political strategist, understood this better than most. While he's known for the blunt and bold advice in his book The Prince, some of his sharpest insights are about what you don't say. He once wrote, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances." And he was right. Words create appearances, but silence preserves reality. In today's culture of oversharing, the people who stay quiet, who resist the urge to explain and reveal, often end up miles ahead. Why? Because they're not giving anything away. They're not creating liabilities with their words. While others talk about winning, these silent operators are already doing it. Back in Machiavelli's day, saying the wrong thing could literally get you exiled or executed. Nowadays, the stakes aren't as deadly, but unnecessary talking still carries risk. Words expose you. They create commitments you may not want later. They open you up to judgment. They give you competition ammo to use against you. Machiavelli observed, "Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands," meaning people form opinions based on what they see, not what they feel. If you're always talking, always showing you cards, people start to believe they know you, and they'll start predicting your moves. But if you hold back, you keep them guessing, you stay unpredictable. And that's powerful. Here's what happens when you talk too much. First, you lock yourself in. The moment you say, "I'm going to do X," people expect it. If you pivot later, you look flaky or dishonest. Stay silent, and you're free to change direction without having to justify it. Second, you give away your thought process. The more you explain yourself, the more others can understand how you think. That makes it easier for them to manipulate or outmaneuver you. Machiavelli said, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." In other words, people can judge your capability by what you reveal, and what you reveal might not always work in your favor. Third, overtalking ruins your mystique, and mystique matters. Machiavelli said it best. "It is far safer to be feared than loved." Fear, respect, authority, they all require a little distance. When you explain everything, justify every action, share every detail, you become ordinary. And ordinary doesn't inspire loyalty or awe. Think about it. The coworker who chimes in during every meeting? Eventually, people stop listening. The friend who posts their entire life on social media? You scroll past. The negotiator who fills awkward silences with nervous chatter? They give away leverage. And the leader who answers every criticism? They start to sound insecure, not strong. Machiavelli wouldn't see our obsession with transparency and communication as authenticity. He'd call it bad strategy. We're giving away too much. We're trying to earn points by exposing ourselves, but we're not getting equal value in return. Now, let's dig into what strategic silence actually looks like. It's not about being mute. It's about choosing when to speak and when not to. It's about controlling information. Machiavellian silence comes in three distinct types, each with its own purpose and power. First, we've got information gathering silence. This is when you hold back at the start. You let others talk first. You learn what they think, what they want, what they're afraid of before you say anything. Machiavelli said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." Translation: the fool blurts out their position and learns nothing. The wise one waits, listens, and collects valuable intel. You've probably heard this in business. Whoever speaks first in a negotiation loses. And it's often true. In relationships, too, the one who listens more usually understands the dynamic better. In competition, people who broadcast their game plan early usually get outplayed. Silence, in these moments, gives you a one-way window into the minds of others, while keeping yours protected. Second, we have authority-building silence. Machiavelli knew that perception is power. And few things shape perception like selective speech. He wrote, "A prince must imitate the fox and the lion. The lion protects against wolves. The fox avoids traps. The fox's real trick? Knowing when talking actually weakens your authority. When someone only speaks when it matters, their words hit harder. A leader who doesn't comment on every little thing, when they do speak, people pay attention. Someone who doesn't defend themselves against every criticism, they project confidence, not defensiveness. That's why the quietest people in the room often seem the most powerful. The junior employee over-explains. The CEO, they speak in short, firm statements. The insecure person rambles. The confident one says, no, and moves on. This isn't about being rude, it's about choosing your words for impact, not volume. Third, there's ambiguity-preserving silence. Machiavelli once said, "It is safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking." That idea applies to more than just emotions. Sometimes it's safer to let people believe what they want to believe. By staying vague, you allow others to project their hopes, fears, or expectations onto you. Politicians do this all the time. They'll make broad, inspiring statements that sound good to everyone, but mean different things to different groups. This gives them flexibility. They haven't committed to a fixed position, so they can pivot when needed. Negotiators do it too. They avoid firm positions early so they don't close off potential deals. Leaders do it when they outline a vision without spelling out every step, so they can adjust the plan if conditions change. Ambiguity-preserving silence isn't lying. It's about resisting the pressure to explain everything. It's about keeping options open. And that flexibility, that's an advantage. But beyond these tactics, silence also has psychological power. Silence makes people project. Humans hate uncertainty. So when you're silent, others fill in the blanks, usually with their own fears, insecurities, or desires. That gives you insight. While they reveal their hand, you don't even have to play yours. That's why great negotiators, interrogators, even therapists use silence. When people get uncomfortable, they talk. And when they talk, they reveal. Silence doesn't just create space, it pulls information toward you. Here's the thing. Silence isn't just about not speaking. Machiavellian silence is a strategy. And like any good strategy, it has different thorns depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Let's break down the 3 types of strategic silence that Machiavelli would approve of, and how they actually play out today. First, we've got information gathering silence. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." In other words, the fool rushes to speak, giving everything away. The wise, they wait, they listen, they collect data before showing their cards. Think about negotiations. There's an old saying, whoever speaks first loses. Why? Because the moment you start talking, you reveal your position. You show what you want. You show your boundaries. But the person who listens gains an upper hand. They hear your hopes, fears, your limits. And they haven't given you anything back. It works in relationships too. The person who listens more often has a better grasp on the emotional landscape. They understand what's really going on. Not just the words being said, but the subtext, the insecurities, the priorities. Meanwhile, the one who talks too much misses the clues. In competition, it's why people who talk up their plans before acting rarely live up to their own hype. Meanwhile, the silent competitor, they're focused on execution, not exposition. Second, there's authority-building silence. Machiavelli understood that power is partly about perception. And perception, weirdly enough, benefits from restraint. He wrote, "A prince must imitate the fox and the lion. For the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. The fox knows when talking weakens authority. And so should we. Here's how it works. When a leader only speaks on important matters, and stays quiet on the trivial, their words carry more weight. It's the old less is more principle, but applied to leadership. If you're always jumping in to respond to every little thing, it comes off as insecure. But when you pick your moments, people lean in when you do speak. Same with criticism. The insecure person defends themselves constantly. The confident one, they respond when needed and only then. That calm confidence? That's power. Think about the hierarchy in a workplace. Who talks the most in meetings? Usually the new or nervous folks. Who speaks the least but commands attention when they do? The senior people. The CEO. Their silence isn't absence. It's presence. Strategic, deliberate, and powerful. And finally, there's ambiguity-preserving silence. This one's a game-changer. Machiavelli famously said it's better to be feared than loved. But what he really meant is, when you can't be both, keep people guessing. Ambiguity-preserving silence is about leaving your position just unclear enough that people can interpret it in multiple ways. You maintain flexibility. You keep your options open. You let others assume what they want. Politicians are masters at this. They make vague statements that allow supporters from different sides to project their own beliefs onto them. One message, multiple interpretations. That's not lying, it's control. In negotiations, this kind of silence means not locking yourself into one outcome too soon. In leadership, it means giving people a vision but leaving room to adjust the details as needed. In each case, you're not misleading anyone. You're avoiding the trap of overcommitment. So, strategic silence isn't passive. It's active. It's not about holding your tongue just because you're shy or cautious. It's about choosing when to speak and when not to, based on what's actually most effective for your goals. And beyond the tactics, there's the psychological power of silence. Because silence changes the way people think. About you, about themselves, about what's happening in the moment. Here's why silence is psychologically powerful. First, silence creates projection. People hate a vacuum. When someone doesn't speak, others instinctively fill in the blanks. They guess what you're thinking. They assume motives, emotions, even intentions. And those guesses, they reveal more about them than about you. This is huge in negotiations and interrogations. Skilled interrogators don't ask a million questions. They sit in silence, let the discomfort build, and wait. Eventually, the subject starts talking just to fill the space. And what they reveal, often way more than they would have said under pressure. You can use this in everyday interactions too. Stay quiet at the right moment, and watch how people start revealing their cards because silence feels like pressure. Second, silence establishes dominance. In conversations, the person who talks the most isn't necessarily in control. In fact, the one who talks less often comes off as more powerful. Why? Because the more you speak, the more you seem like you're trying to win approval. But the person who's measured, who speaks deliberately, or waits until everyone else has spoken, sends a different signal. I'm not here to prove myself. I'm already solid. This is why interview candidates who ask smart questions often do better than those who just talk about themselves. It's why the quiet person in a meeting is sometimes seen as more thoughtful or insightful than the one who's constantly contributing. And it's why in conflict, a calm, quiet stance often carries more weight than shouting or arguing. Third, silence creates mystique. Machiavelli said people judge more by what they see than by what they feel. And what people can't fully see, that gets exaggerated in their minds. The more you explain yourself, the more ordinary you seem. But when you leave parts of yourself hidden, your reasoning, your full plan, your emotions, you gain an edge. You become harder to pin down, more interesting, more powerful. In leadership, this matters a lot. A leader who explains every decision in full demystifies their role. But a leader who shares the outcome and keeps the deliberation behind closed doors retains an aura of authority. They're not hiding, they're just protecting their edge. This isn't deception, it's restraint. It's the understanding that people need to believe in something bigger than themselves. And that belief often relies on what they don't know. So now that you understand the 3 strategic uses of silence and the psychology behind it, how do you apply this in your real life? Let's talk tactics. 1. Use silence as a response tool. Most people feel compelled to fill every gap in conversation. Don't. Instead, pause before you speak, even for just a few seconds. Those seconds signal control. They make people hang on your next word. They let you process and choose your words with precision. In conflict, don't react instantly. Let silence do the heavy lifting. That moment of pause can de-escalate tension. Make the other person second-guess their aggression, or even prompt them to soften their tone on their own. In sales, interviews, debates, ask a powerful question, then shut up. Let the silence build. The other person will often reveal way more than they intended just to break the awkwardness. 2. Don't correct every misunderstanding. It's natural to want to defend yourself when people misinterpret your intentions. But often, the stronger move is to let them stay unsure. Why? Because if you correct every misconception, you're teaching people that they can pull you into justifying yourself at any time. But when you stay silent, you maintain power. You give off the vibe, I don't owe anyone an explanation. This works especially well when someone's trying to bait you or undermine you subtly. If you don't respond, they're stuck reacting to a version of you they can't quite define. 3. Silence can buy you time and leverage. Let's say someone gives you an offer, whether it's a business deal, a salary, or even a request in a relationship. Most people rush to answer. But if you go silent, if you just pause and hold the moment, the power dynamic shifts. You're no longer reacting on their timeline, you're making them wait on yours. Often, they'll start adjusting or sweetening the deal before you even say a word. That's not manipulation. That's poise. That's leverage. And in a Machiavellian world, leverage is everything. 4. Use silence to deepen respect. In friendships, in partnerships, in leadership, people respect those who don't always need to be heard. They respect the person who can hold space without trying to dominate it. When someone's venting or struggling, silence is more powerful than advice. When someone disagrees with you, silence lets them feel heard before you respond. And when someone challenges you, silence shows you don't get rattled. Silence is discipline, and people respect discipline. Final thought. In the age of noise, of instant replies, constant opinions, performative vulnerability, silence is a superpower. Not because it hides weakness, but because it reveals restraint. Machiavelli understood that power doesn't just come from force. It comes from the appearance of strength. And nothing appears stronger than someone who doesn't need to explain, justify, or react. So if you want more control, more clarity, more quiet dominance, start with this. Say less. Mean more. Hold your silence. Let them wonder. Because the most powerful person in the room isn't always the loudest. It's the one who speaks last or not at all.